Occupied France, 1943. A railway depot under German control. Workers shovel coal into the tender of a locomotive. Routine work that keeps the Nazi war machine running. But mixed in with thousands of lumps of genuine coal is something else. Something that looks identical, feels identical, weighs the same, but isn't coal at all. It's a bomb. Hours later, the locomotive pulls out of the station. The fireman shovels coal into the firebox to build steam. The fake lump goes in with the rest. Then Aussie explosion. The boiler ruptures. Scalding steam erupts. The locomotive derails. The tracks are blocked. Supply lines halt for weeks. And nobody knows it was sabotage. Just another unfortunate boiler accident in wartime. Tonight, we're examining one of the SOE's most brilliantly simple weapons, explosive coal. The sabotage device so effective, it turned the fuel-powering Nazi Germany into the weapon destroying it. By 1941, Britain's Special Operations Executive faced a fundamental challenge. Churchill's order to set Europe ablaze required sabotaging German infrastructure across occupied Europe. But how do you destroy locomotives, factories, and power stations when every facility is guarded? The answer came from understanding one simple fact. These targets all depended on coal. Steam locomotives burned tons of it daily. Factory furnaces consumed mountains of it. Power stations ran on it. Coal was everywhere, essential and completely trusted. What if you could weaponize it? The concept wasn't new. During the American Civil War, Confederate Captain Thomas Edgeworth Courtney had developed what he called the coal torpedo. Cast iron shells disguised as coal lumps, filled with gunpowder. Confederate agents would slip these into Union ship coal bunkers, hoping they'd explode when shoveled into boilers. The results were mixed. Some ships were destroyed, others weren't. But the psychological impact was enormous. Union crews became paranoid about their coal supplies. The SOE saw potential in reviving and perfecting this Civil War weapon. At Station WWII, the SOE's secret weapons research facility at Aston House near Stevenage, engineers began developing a modern version of explosive coal. But they immediately encountered the same problem that plagued Courtney. Real coal is incredibly difficult to work with. An SOE technician named Gostelow later recalled the challenge. I was asked if I could drill holes in some lumps of coal. I tried with a brace and a 6-inch long tube that had a serrated end. I found that if too much pressure was applied, the coal would disintegrate. I thought, I wonder what the hell they want this for. Don't ask, just do it. He managed to drill 3 lumps successfully. Then he was told to insert plastic explosive and a detonator, then glue coal dust over the hole. That's when he understood. These weren't just experiments, these were weapons. But drilling each piece of coal individually wasn't practical for mass production. The SOE needed thousands of these devices. The solution came from Station 15th, another SOE research center. Engineers there developed a revolutionary technique. Don't use real coal at all. Make fake coal. They created plaster molds based on real coal lumps. The plaster was specially formulated, Herculite plaster, and dyed black to match coal's color. Each fake lump was hand-cast from molds taken from actual coal to ensure realistic, irregular shapes. Here's the genius. The plaster was porous enough to be coated with real coal dust. After coating, these fakes were indistinguishable from genuine coal. Same color, same texture, same weight when filled with the right amount of explosive. The interior was hollowed out to create a cavity. This cavity was filled with plastic explosive, PE or Nobel 808, and fitted with a detonator. Some versions used time delay fuses. Others were designed to detonate from heat when thrown into a furnace. The detonation methods varied based on the target. The result was a weapon that could hide in plain sight among thousands of genuine coal lumps, waiting to be shoveled into a firebox where it would destroy the very machine it was meant to fuel. Production of explosive coal began in earnest in 1941 at multiple SOE facilities. According to historians Frederick Boyce and David Everett, approximately 3.5 tons of explosive coal were manufactured between 1941 and 1945. That's thousands of individual pieces, each one a potential sabotage operation. The manufacturing process was meticulous. First, genuine coal lumps of various sizes were selected and used to create plaster molds. The SOE wanted variety. Coal comes in different shapes and sizes, so the fakes needed that same variation to avoid detection. The molds were filled with the specially formulated Herculite plaster, dyed black during mixing. Before the plaster fully hardened, a cavity was carved out for the explosive charge. Once cured, each fake lump was removed from its mold. The cavity was then packed with approximately 113 to 225 grams, 4 to 8 ounces, of plastic explosive, enough to rupture a boiler or damage a locomotive engine beyond repair. A detonator was carefully inserted. Some used time delay pencil fuses, the same type used in the explosive rats we covered in a previous video. Others used instantaneous detonators that would fire from the heat and pressure of a furnace. The opening was sealed with more plaster and coal dust. The entire exterior was then coated with coal dust mixed with glue, creating a surface that looked and felt exactly like real coal. Finally, each piece was weighed. If it was too light compared to real coal of the same size, more material was added. If too heavy, it was rejected. Perfect weight matching was critical. Anyone handling the coal shouldn't notice anything unusual. The finished products were packaged in containers and prepared for delivery to occupied Europe. Distribution was handled through the same networks the SOE used for all their supplies. Aircraft would drop containers by parachute to resistance groups. Agents would smuggle them across borders. Fishing boats would deliver them to coastal resistance cells. The targets were carefully chosen. Railway depots where locomotives took on coal. A few fake lumps mixed into a coal tender would travel with the train until shoveled into the firebox, exploding when the locomotive was miles away from the depot, making it nearly impossible to trace back to sabotage. Factory coal yards slip explosive coal into the storage piles, and eventually, someone would shovel it into a factory furnace. The explosion would damage the furnace, shut down production, and create paranoia about the entire coal supply. Power stations. Disrupting electrical generation could black out entire regions, hampering German military operations and industrial production. Ship coal bunkers. Though less common than land targets, explosive coal was also used against coal-fired ships and ports. The beauty of this weapon was its patience. Unlike a time bomb that had to detonate at a specific moment, explosive coal could wait. Days, weeks, even months if it sat in a coal pile. Eventually, someone would use it. And when they did, the results were devastating. The actual operational use of explosive coal is difficult to document precisely. By its very nature, successful use looked like accidents rather than sabotage. A locomotive boiler explosion could be metal fatigue, could be overpressure, could be poor maintenance. In wartime, equipment failures were common. Unless someone found evidence of explosives at the scene, it would simply be recorded as an accident. This was exactly what the SOE wanted. But we do know that explosive coal was distributed extensively. Resistance movements in France, Belgium, Holland, Norway, and other occupied territories received shipments. The American OSS also manufactured their own version for use in the Pacific and European theaters. One documented incident involved a locomotive in occupied France that suffered a catastrophic boiler explosion. When investigators examined the wreckage, they found fragments of what appeared to be plaster and traces of explosives. The railway line was shut down for 2 weeks while every coal pile at that depot was inspected. That's when the Germans discovered the deception. Just as with the explosive rats, once the Germans knew about explosive coal, they had to assume it was everywhere. The paranoia spread rapidly. Railway depots instituted inspection procedures. Workers were ordered to examine coal before loading it. But how do you inspect thousands of tons of coal? How do you spot a fake when it's been expertly crafted to be indistinguishable from the real thing? You can't. Not reliably. Not without dedicating enormous resources to the task. So the Germans did what they had to do. They diverted resources. They assigned personnel to inspect coal. They created protocols for handling coal supplies. They instituted security measures at depots. All of this was exactly what the SOE wanted. Every hour spent inspecting coal was an hour not spent fighting. Every worker assigned to coal security was a worker not available for other duties. The explosive coal achieved success on multiple levels: direct damage, locomotives destroyed, factory furnaces damaged, operations disrupted. The exact number of successful explosions is unknown, but even a few dozen would have caused significant disruption. Economic impact. Coal-fired equipment couldn't be trusted. This created delays, required inspections, and slowed the German war machine. Psychological warfare. German workers became nervous around coal. The fuel they handled every day might kill them. This stress affected morale and productivity. Resource diversion. The Germans had to respond to the threat. Security protocols, inspections, investigations. All of this consumed resources that could have been used elsewhere. The simplicity was its strength. No complex electronics, no sophisticated timing mechanisms, just plaster, plastic explosive, and coal dust. Easy to manufacture, easy to transport, easy to deploy, impossible to completely defend against. Imperial War Museum archives contain rare color footage of SOE testing explosive coal. In the footage, we see what appears to be incendiary versions, coal bombs that burst into flames rather than exploding. These would have been devastating if placed in coal bunkers, where they could start uncontrollable coal fires rather than single explosions. The SOE developed variations for different targets. High explosive versions for maximum structural damage to boilers and engines. Incendiary versions designed to start coal fires that were nearly impossible to extinguish. Delayed detonation versions that would explode hours after being shoveled, making it even harder to trace back to the source. By 1944, as Allied forces advanced across Europe, the need for explosive coal diminished. Railways were being captured rather than sabotaged. Factories in newly liberated territories needed to be preserved, not destroyed. But the weapon's legacy continued. The concept of disguising explosives as everyday objects became a cornerstone of covert operations. The SOE's innovation inspired countless other disguised weapons. The explosive coal represents everything the SOE stood for: ingenious simplicity, asymmetric warfare, and the willingness to think unconventionally. It wasn't the most powerful weapon of WWII. It wasn't the most advanced. It didn't have the dramatic impact of a bombing raid or a tank assault. But it was effective. It was persistent, and it was impossible to completely stop. Think about the psychology at play here. Every time a German worker shoveled coal into a locomotive or furnace, they had to wonder, is this one real? Could this be the one that explodes? That constant, low-level fear is what made explosive coal so devastating. Not just the explosions themselves, but the knowledge that any piece of coal could be a bomb. The SOE turned one of Germany's most essential resources, the coal that powered their war machine, into a weapon against them. The very act of fueling a locomotive became an act of potential self-destruction. Today, examples of explosive coal are extremely rare. A few specimens survive in museum collections, including the Imperial War Museum in London. They sit in display cases, looking for all the world like ordinary lumps of coal, until you read the placard explaining what they really are. The explosive coal reminds us that in warfare, the most effective weapon isn't always the most complex. Sometimes, the best weapon is the one your enemy never suspects. The one hiding in plain sight. The one that turns their own infrastructure against them. This was the explosive coal. Simple. Invisible. Devastating. the fake fuel that destroyed real engines, the patient bomb that waited in coal piles, the sabotage weapon that turned Nazi Germany's essential resource into their hidden enemy.